wanted something done, they write it down, they give somebody who was in charge of whatever it was he wanted done, and then they call So you see, at Army headquarters, World War II was complicated. And at the head, he didn't have time to do all the little stuff. Think about it. Generals deal in generalities. They don't go down in the trenches and figure out what an Army platoon. They're done. They're going to eat rations. They're going to have to use lanterns in our hospitals, and they're not going anywhere. That's how important gasoline was. And it was by the millions of gallons. A tank gets a whole 4 miles per gallon. Think about that. All right, now, are we there? What time is it?
1:30.
1:30?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't here. I'm going to leave and come back in. Then I'm here. I can't. I'm not here anymore.
Yeah.
Pay attention. I'm going to answer your questions later. Okay, what's your question?
How did he know his area?
Well, he had O.P. Wyman, who was head of the 19th Air Tactical Command, who had ground air communications with him. And it was the first general who was able to do that. Now can I go? No, one question, you had another, you get that later.
Yeah, I know. Everybody ready?
No, we're not ready. Did I tell you I was ready? All right, here we go.
Ladies and gentlemen, the commander of the 3rd Army, General Georgius Patton Jr.
Attention!
Be seated. As members of the press corps here today, I want to remind you that everything that you hear today is absolutely top secret. If any word gets out of what's said here, you're going to be skinned. And you'll be sent back on a slow boat after I get through skinning you.
General?
This is top secret stuff.
Excuse me, sir. General Eisenhower just arrived.
All right, attention, get back up again.
Carry on, please. Sit down, please. Please.
Eisenhower, sir, I'm glad you're here. What's yours?
How are you doing?
Won't you have a seat? Here, you can have Bradley's seat. All right, see, it all flows downhill at this particular moment I'm at. All right, so, get on with it. Big clap.
Yes, sir. Sir, this afternoon's briefing. Welcome, everybody. This is the war room. This is what you would see back in World War II, that General Patton's briefing that he would be getting every day, several times during the day. So you're going to be hearing some top secret stuff and things that's going on. And as he said, this is top secret. It's not to leave this area.
Or it will.
We also have, as guests, we have General Eisenhower and General Bradley. So you'll have the opportunity to discuss things or ask them questions at the conclusion of this briefing. At this time, I want to introduce Colonel White, who will be doing the G2 briefing for intelligence. Colonel White.
Good morning, sir. Good morning.
The German forces are currently operating in our zone. Their estimated strength is 8 divisions, consisting of 6,000 or 63 22,750 troops, 175 tanks, and anti-aircraft. In their immediate reserves, we're estimating 5 divisions, 42,000 troops, and 150 tanks. The Germans are continuing to delay our advance, and they are destroying bridges and laying additional minefields, constructing roadblocks, felling trees. They're also constructing bunkers as they fall back.
All right. I want you to get a hold of the 6th Cavalry group.
Yes, sir.
I want them to go up to their eyes and ears. I want them to get as close to the enemy activity as possible. Then I want you to send some recon teams back to me and get up to date. Then I want you to get a hold of General Walker and 20th Corps and ask the 4th Armored Division to go ahead and delay where we was going to send them this morning and take them back into the area near the views. Can you do that?
Yes, sir.
All right, then I want you to get confirmation that they understand the order and they're to pull out by 1700 today. And I want them there before dawn. You got that?
Yes, sir.
All right. You got another man? Any other questions? You got it? Back back away, sir.
Sir. I'm Lieutenant Colonel Wakely. I'm the G3 Operations Officer. Their 12th Army Group has ordered us to secure the crossings on the Rhine River at Mannheim and at Mainz, and if sufficient forces are available, we're also to try to establish a bridgehead at Karlsruhe. I think we have enough guys that we can do that, sir. Heavy fighting continued along the 20th Corps area. Germans were determined to hold on to the Mets to the last man, sir, just like you said they would. Counterattacks have delayed 7th Armored Division in their crossing at the Seal River, just south of Metz, and Germans are using dug-in tanks as artillery. And they're making small counterattacks along the front lines, but we're beating them back. One German counterattack against the 5th Infantry Division was preceded by 300 rounds of artillery preparation, so we developed a sound and flash base just east of the Moselle River in an attempt to locate that battery so we can neutralize it. They also were firing not only on the 5th Infantry but the 7th Armored, but I don't believe that they took any casualties. They did have a little damage to equipment, not very much. Our 19th TAC Air first this morning flew 245 sorties, 19 missions with heavy claims made, especially on our rail transportation. 15 rail lines were cut, 256 railroad cars, 14 locomotives, 47 motor transports, and 20 tanks and armored vehicles were damaged and destroyed. Also, TAC Air on their return trip with the heavies delivered us 12,000 gallons of gasoline at St. Pierre Reserve, and we're going to send them back out for another run after this next bombing run. Also, this afternoon's TAC Air missions, 273 sorties, 23 missions, with claims against both enemy transportation and military installations. 21 rail lines were cut, 135 rail cars, 120 motor transports, 13 locomotives, 4 more supply dumps, 6 gun installations, 22 tanks and armored vehicles were damaged and destroyed. That's all I have at this point, sir.
Right.
What are your orders?
Here's what we should do. You mentioned those tanks that stopped and made pillboxes out of it.
Yes, sir.
I know the 19th Air Tactical Command has been flying several sorties and they have camera-equipped equipment. I want each one of those bases marked.
Yes, sir.
You get a hold of our artillery, and if they're in range, I want them taken out before our troops get there. If they're not in range, you get a hold of General Wyman and get the 19th Air Tactical to go back over since they took the damn photographs. I don't know where the damn tanks are, and I want them taken out of the ground. All right? Now, as far as Mets, did you tell me them SS sons of bitches refused to surrender?
Absolutely, sir.
They want to fight to the last man, do they?
Their words to you were very derogatory, sir.
Well, we're just going to erase that.
I thought you would, sir.
Didn't you say at the ammo dump and the gasoline depot that you had a bunch of captured German gasoline?
Yes, sir. It won't use. It burns, but it won't run in our vehicles.
You got a lot of it?
Yes, sir. Oh, hold on.
Now, do you know which fortification in Metz those Nazi sons of bitches are?
Yes, sir, we got it.
I want you to take that gasoline and I want you to pipe it down their air vents and I want you to light it up.
Really?
I do. We're going to have some Nazi barbecue like they've never had one before.
Yes, sir, we are.
All right, now. We've got to I want you to send some engineers in with those groups that are coming with pontoon bridges and what it takes to cross those bridges. If we get an opportunity and we open up an area that we can cross, I want those crossed.
Yes, sir, we're working on that now, trying to get them unjammed and up towards the front.
Now you told me last night, an engineer got with you, and you told me last night in passing that in order to restore that bridge near the railroad bridge near Nancy, that they'd have to work 3 days. Is that correct?
Approximately 3 days' work, he said.
What if they worked in 24 hours? What would that take?
Probably a day and a half, I'd say.
They'd have to work at night, though, wouldn't they?
Yes, sir.
Didn't that engineer say he didn't want to work at night because they'd have to put floodlights up? Can
Yes,
you be
sir.
targets?
Yes, sir. That's
You
what
go
his
back
concern
and you
was.
tell that engineer that he's working tonight. And we're going to flood the place with floodlights. And I want every single anti-aircraft and every single cannon we got, and we're going to have us a damn fine Hinkle shoot tonight. And I want the train coming over tomorrow morning because it's delivering our wounded, and I want to get them back to Paris, and that's the only rail we can get done.
Yes, sir.
And I don't care what it takes.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I'll get it. I also have an engineer company, as a request yesterday, on the railheads to get cars. We've got about 45 box cars set up that will be repaired and are usable that we can transport people and equipment.
General Lee, back in Paris, has got 2 blocks, all right? 2 blocks of our stuff sitting there, and he can't seem to get all the equipment back up here to us, and we need it badly. So I'm going to send trains down there, and sir, if you wouldn't mind asking the good general to load the son of a bitches up so our troops can have what they need.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. And excuse my language. It just slips out.
George,
Then there was something you mentioned about this offensive that I wanted to do.
Yeah. George, we've got a gasoline problem. You know that we've got limited access on several forces. You know that the Germans destroyed the submarine force, have a problem bringing gas forward. I have got to short you on gasoline.
But, sir, if you give me gasoline, I'll go to Berlin with it. I'll kill Germans with it.
I'm sorry, George. I've got to divert some gasoline to Montgomery.
I might have known it was Montgomery. What did that little son of a ally have to do with the gasoline, sir?
George, the British are our allies, okay?
Do they know it?
I know your opinion of Montgomery,
All right, yes, sir.
but you're going to lose 20% of your gasoline.
20%?
You're lucky.
That means I'm going to have to draw to a halt.
You have to come to a complete halt.
Well, I have a plan.
What is it?
Well, you see, sir, if I just kind of reconnoiter some troops in front of the tanks that I have, I'm afraid of a counterattack, sir.
Go on a map.
Well, here's what we're going to do. The counterattack could come here, all right? So what we can do is we can build a defensive perimeter there. But what I'll need permission is a little gasoline so I can have some reconnoitering here in case the counterattack, I have to be forewarned.
George. A reconnaissance mission, not a reconnaissance in force.
No, just a reconnaissance mission, sir.
All right. I'll tell you what I'll do.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to take your gas. Give me Montgomery. Why don't we go down to the French? They're not making any headway anyway. They're tied up in the rain. I'll divert some of their gasoline to you. But I do not want a decisive engagement. I don't mind that you have a minor reconnaissance in force. But for God's sake, you're getting so far ahead of everybody else. Don't do this to me.
Well, I won't, sir. They can't keep up. I'll send the messages to keep up with me, sir.
You'll get your gasoline. You're not going to get enough. It's a little offensive. You'll get enough. Reconnaissance.
Okay, I got it.
Got it?
Yeah, I got it.
You agree to that?
Oh, yes, sir. I always follow orders.
All right. I know that.
Yeah, we've been friends all our lives. You know that by God, you do the stuff. Hell, don't tell nobody. You may even make a good president.
Let's get through the war first.
Okay, you got it.
Thank you.
Now, he got into a meeting with Bradley. Now let me tell you what really happened. I sent a reconnaissance, like I said I would. Now reconnaissance are a group of folks that goes where the army has stopped, the tanks have stopped, and they go ahead to make sure that there's not going to be a counterattack. Well, by God, if you got forces out there ahead of your tanks and stuff, they could be in danger, right? So I had to send the tanks up a little closer to protect them. Well, when I did that, they were protected, so there weren't no Germans, so they went a little further. And then we put some more tanks behind them, and hell, before he knew it, I was 30 more miles down the road. But don't tell him. That's what really happened. And they called it rock soup. Now let me tell you about rock soup, and he did it all the way through the war. When he was during the Depression, there were hobos up and down the rail lines, and they were homeless. And what they would do, they were more panhandlers than anything else. They would show up and they would smell food being cooked because a lot of rail lines stopped in small towns, and they would find them something and ask for a bowl. Says, "Ma'am, can I have a bowl?" And the lady would say, "Well, what do you use a bowl for?" "Well, I'm going to put some water in it over here at the well and make rock soup." "Rock soup?" "Oh, yes, ma'am." So there's some nutrition in the rocks. But, you know, I was smelling you're being cooking. You wouldn't happen to have any scraps, you know, like some potato peelings or something. And, of course, the lady would feel sorry for them. And before you know it, they had a great big old plate. She asked if they wanted some more. And they were full. Then they would go down and to the next place and start all over. So they had breakfast, dinner, and they had it down. That's the hobo rock soup. So I figured that if I could get a little bit, and I just added a little bit more, before I know it, I would have a full plate. And that actually happened. Now,
General, sir?
yes.
General Walker has sent us a gift. General Eisenhower.
Yes.
Sergeant? Compliments General Walker on 24. General?
Why? We have two Nazi sons of bitches come to visit. I happen to know something you don't. Right across over there, in that tent, you see it? Is about 30 Russians who are asking me if they can bring some German officers back to Russia. And their intent is to find out what the hell your troops did, and I happen to know you and you were both there, to some of their troops who were murdered. Now you can either learn to speak English really quick, or we're going to ask the Russians if they would like to borrow you like forever. Now I have a question. You know that most of your forces are running out of men and material. You realize that the longer this war goes on, the weaker you're going to become, and the stronger we're going to become. Is that correct? Yeah. All right. You're into tanks. You know this. Your tanks are breaking down at a record speed. Now, if the war is lost, why in the hell do you keep fighting it and losing good German troops when you can just surrender the whole thing and get the war over with?
I would prefer to see is that we be prevented to surrender to the Western Allies and continue to defend against the Bolsheviks in the East.
You mean fight the Russians with the Germans?
Yeah.
God damn, what a good idea. I'll tell you what. We're going to put you back in the prisoner of war camp, and you just keep this under your hat, okay?
Russians are our allies.
Well, yes they are.
And will be our allies.
Oh,
Yes. Do we understand?
we do. Just forget anything I ever said.
Thank you.
See me a little bit later. Well, it's good night. Now, let's go back to the camps. All right.
They may not be, but right now they're helping us get your butt.
Thank you.
Now, what do you have back there?
I thought you might join us for the toast.
To who?
For surrender.
Well, that's a good toast. We'll drink it a little bit later.
Very good.
All right, I'll see you back. We have some things to talk, discuss about their surrender. Sir. We're getting back to what I'm going to do later. General Bradley, sir, I see y'all come back. You didn't miss anything. Would you like to address the group and tell them what your immediate plans are, sir?
As we're in April of 1945, the immediate plan is to end the war as quick as possible. That's always been General Eisenhower's overall plan, is to get us out of this war as soon as possible. But we do have the idea that for the sake of saving American troops, that we're going to let the Bolsheviks, we're going to let our Russian allies go to Berlin. We have other plans, one of which General Patton's not quite so fond of. We're going to veer him down to the south and the east. We're going to send him down towards Prague, see how far he makes in that direction before he meets up with those Russians. We don't want him to get too close.
Oh, sir, I wouldn't get too close. No.
And then we also have 6th Army group down in the south that's going to turn basically due south. And the immediate plan is to reach the Elbe River and hold there, wait for our Russian allies to advance to us.
Y'all have any questions, General Bradley? They'll get back to you. Thank you, sir. Now, they're not here anymore. You heard of the Lipizzaner horses? Well, during this process, there was a group of Lipizzaner Stallions who had been around about 1400, and they've been trained as the best riding horses in the world. The Russians were in danger of getting them. They were still held by the Germans, and if we didn't rescue those horses, there was a good chance they would become extinct. Both Japan knew about it, Hitler knew about it, he'd even extracted one to give to Hirohito. So, you're going to read something that's in my book that's soon to be out. And I'm going to read you something that's not widely known. There was always a question whether or not General Patton would actually try to get a war with the Russians. And of course he denied it vehemently, and he did follow orders. But in case his orders ever suggested that he could, he was ready. And this was a newspaper report from the 2nd Cavalry Group Colonel, Colonel Reed, that he put in a newspaper in 1963. And here's what he said. Toward the end of the war, Patton realized that the Russians were our enemies, and he tried to keep them out of Czechoslovakia. Eisenhower had stopped his armies at the Czech border. We had just captured an area near the Wagner Festival when Patton sent us to go to the Czech border. This is Patton sending the 2nd Cavalry Group, which is a fairly large force. He says, I was told to get into Czechoslovakia as far as possible. Then radio that I was in trouble, surrounded and cut to pieces. Then Patton would send a whole division in and save us. Then we were told to go further in to do it again. And I'm sure glad this didn't come out while I was still alive. So he was prepared if necessary. But he followed orders. He didn't like the orders. But there's not an incident where he directly disobeyed orders. It would seem that he stretched it a little bit on occasion. But that was okay, because he was feeling like that if he could save lives, and he could do that, it was important. Now I'll tell you something else he did. The Army was segregated. I want to tell you some stories that are not widely known, about 3 of them in a hurry. During build-up in England, there was a race riot. And several of the black soldiers had gone to exercise their rights. The enlisted man's messes and the officers' messes, and they returned to what? And they got angry about it, as rightfully so they should, because they were American soldiers in American uniform. There was a race riot and they were arrested. O.A. Davis was a brigadier general. He was the highest ranking black officer in the United States Army, and he visited Patton, and they talked. Shortly thereafter, Patton, having agreed with him, sent for those 20 men that had been arrested. And he brought them into his area near his encampment. He said, look, if you will get back into service and you will do your duty, we're going to expunge your record, and that will have never happened. It'll be off. It'll be gone. Then he found out that there was a whole bunch of prisoners of all kinds that were in brigs for silly stuff. They didn't salute. They didn't do the paperwork right. They didn't do that. There was over 1,500 of them. So he emptied all the jails and brought them to him. And he said, listen to me. We need soldiers. You're here for minor infractions. If you will get back to your units and you will fight, every single thing you have done will be expunged. And we'll forget it happened. And they went to battle. Then he found out that the 761st Tank Battalion, an all-black battalion, had been training for 3 years in the States going around in circles. He says, why can't we use them? Well, sir, they're all black. He said, I don't give a damn what color they are. Bring them. And they arrived, and he addressed them. He said, look, this is important. All eyes are going to be on you because of the color of your skin, but you're going to do okay. I don't give a shit what color you are. I give a shit if you're good fighters. I want you to go out and kill the Nazis. Can you do that? And they said, hell yeah, we can. And they did. They became one of the highest decorated tank battalions in the European theater. You didn't know that, did you? You see, history after a few years begins to paint things in corners that aren't true. He was supposed to be anti-Semitic. His secretary was Jewish. Best friend he ever had. His G2, Oscar Koch, was Jewish. The finest intelligent officer, and predicted that the Battle of the Bulge 9 days before it happened. The real Patton is not like the movies. Never was. The movie was great. The guy won an Academy Award. The whole movie won 7 Academy Awards. It was the best fictitious movie I've ever seen in my life. He didn't say, no bastard ever won a war for dying for his country. Why would he call his own troops bastards? What he did say was to General Gavin one night. He said, you know, we got to get this stuff straight. He says, you know, no bastard really won a war for die for his country. God damn it, he made the other poor dumb bastards die for them. So when they were making the movie, Gavin told the producers about that statement. So rather than just use it in a little place, what did they do? They put it at the beginning of the speech. He never made that speech. He never made it as 4 stars. He never made it with the wearing all those medals. And he didn't say half of what's in that speech. Other than that, it's correct. So that's another thing. But when you see other Patton impersonators, betrayers, or you hear it read it in books, they always start that speech that no bastard didn't happen. What the real speech did was a motivated speech. Imagine that you're 50 miles from home all your life. The war starts, now you're thousands of miles from home. You're a young person, 17, 18, 19 years old. You hear about General Patton, and all of a sudden you find out you're going to be serving under him. You have no idea what this guy is. All you know is he's a spit and polish guy, and he chews up GIs, and you don't know whether or not he's a good general. And he knew that. And he knew these soldiers were scared. So what did he do? First thing he did, he says, men, all this stuff, and he didn't talk this way. He said, men, all this stuff you heard. That was his real voice. And he said that you've heard about the Americans not wanting to fight, wanting to stay out of the war. It's a bunch of horse shit. Americans love to fight. They love a winner. When you were kids, you all enjoyed the champion marble shooter, the big league baseball player, the champion boxer. Americans love a winner. Why, The very thought of losing is hateful to Americans. And I wouldn't give a hoot in hell about a man who lost his life. Americans never have and never will lose a war. So what did he tell them? They're not going to lose. The Nazis are not Supermen. Don't ever think they are. Some of you are wondering whether or not you'll chicken out under fire. And then he went on to tell them the Army is a team. It eats, it sleeps, it fights as a team. Those individual, this business about individuality that somebody wrote in the Saturday Evening Post is about as, they don't know more anything about real war than they do about, and he didn't say fornicating. Now, if you were a soldier, words like that were normally said in the locker room. They weren't said in public, and they certainly wasn't said by a commanding general. So now they were paying attention. They also knew, because he had given the speech many times, that it was going to be full of all kinds of colorful language. So they had stenography. You know what stenography is? Shorthand? Yeah. They could write in shorthand. So they had all these guys writing in shorthand. Then they were running over to typewriters and typing them out. And they were passing out patent speeches like you would baseball cards. And these speeches wound up in foot lockers. And then they're being sold on eBay today, some of the original. I got 2 of them. And so I know exactly how the speeches came out. Then he would tell them that the Army, he'd go back and tell them about the team. And he would explain that in Gaffa, which was in Sicily, that men would work 24 hours a day driving trucks. He said, what if one of them got tired and decided he didn't want to drive the truck anymore? The supplies couldn't get there, the people couldn't get what they need. And he says, you don't have to be a frontline soldier to be a hero. He says, there was a man up on a telephone line trying to string wire, and bombs were bursting all over the place. And I drove up on him and I asked him what he was doing up there. A little bit dangerous. He says, yes, sir. He says, but the wire has to be strong. We got to have the communications. He says, doesn't all that stuff bother you? He says, no, sir, but you do. I got to finish my job. That's a true soldier. Then he says, my men don't surrender. He says there are a bunch of graves where men were caught on not paying attention because they weren't, and they dug holes. But they were German graves because we snuck up on them. You don't dig holes. We're advancing constantly toward the enemy. I don't want to hear about digging holes and stopping. He says, one of the reasons you don't surrender is a man in North Africa where a German came up on him and he had the drop and the soldier was already shot in the lung. He grabbed the gun from the German, he hit him upside the head, killed the German, grabbed the other one, and then took prisoners before he ever got to a hospital. You don't surrender. Then he ended the speech, somewhat like the movie. He said, 20 years from now, when you have your grandson on your knee, and they ask you what you did in the Great World War II, well, you won't have to say, I shoveled shit in Louisiana. Now here's the rest of the speech. But you can say you rode with that son of a bitch, Georgie Patton, across Europe, and when those goddamn Germans put their head up above ground, they go, it's that son of a bitch, Georgie Patton, the Third Army again. Now, don't any of you tell anybody that I'm here. I'm a secret. Let the Germans find out when we're out there in battle. Now you got to finish up this war so I can go over to Japan and I can shoot the purple pissing Japanese or the Marines get all the credit. That's what the real speech was. Now, if you're not 17, 18, 19 years old and you heard that for the first time, you may not like General Patton, you may not like his rules, but you knew that if he was going to lead you, you had the best chance of getting out of it alive. And that's why they believed in it. That's the real gist of the speech. So I wanted you to hear the real thing. And I know the language is a bit rough, but you know, history is not politically correct. And I won't be when I talk about history. We don't change anything. We tell it words and all. Now, any questions? We're going to get to the questions. If you want to find out something about the real General Patton, or Eisenhower, or Bradley, or anything that you have heard, ask us questions.
World War II, going back before that, it's a little bad.
I wonder if you could comment about the fact that you're self-described as a half-ass.
For doing what?
Because we got shot in the upper thigh in World War I, you tend to
Oh,
get
okay.
drunk and talk about it.
He received a Purple Heart in World War I, but it wasn't a medal like we have today. They had a wound stripe that went on the uniform. And he was leading tanks right near the end of World War I, and the tanks were French-made Renault tanks, and they had a tendency to break down a lot. And his broke down, and he got off, and he told them to come on. And when he looked around, there weren't any tanks left, and there was a machine gun nest there, and he had several troops around him. So he turned around and said, "Come on, guys, come on!" And the machine gun nest opened up and hit him in the backside, and came out the front, and he was able to have kids afterwards, but it was lost. So that's how he got wounded in World War I.
Wow.
Any other questions? Yes, sir.
But General Bradley, I forget, who made the decision to stop the Russians coming? Well, I thought it's a stupid decision, but I won't say that.
Well,
Whoops.
I made that. Let me tell you why I made that. There was a discussion, and of course, General Eisenhower has the final. Hindsight is always 20/20. Okay? We knew that Germany was going to be cut into pieces. Berlin was not going to be in our sector. Number two, American troops were dying. Not in the ones and twos, but in the hundreds. Every step we went forward towards Berlin meant more that our troops died. We knew that we were going to have to pull back to our designated sector anyway. Why not let the Russians take Berlin? Now the Russians lost 100,000 men killed in action the last 30 days of the war, taking Berlin. How many of you had parents who were in Europe in World War II in the military? What's the chance you might not be here if we had gone? Remember, the Cold War did not yet exist. It did not yet exist. Actually, we're foolish enough to think that the Russians would not be as ruthless as Stalin would be. In retrospect, not a good decision. We are sending thousands of telegrams home to families. Is what would you do? Seriously, what would you do? Would you sacrifice thousands of men knowing that within literally weeks later you're going to pull back and give the damn thing to the Russians anyway? Remember,
That's a stupid thing.
Let me help him a little bit more. There's more to the story than what he's saying. Now I'm going to tell you something that's in my book, the text part. Do you know that the first concentration camp that the Allies were aware of was a place called Orndorff? And they were ordered to get to Orndorff by April 1st. They did not know it was a concentration camp for slave labor, part of the Buchenwald system. They had no idea. So if they're ordered to get to there by the 1st, there must be some other reason. The reason is that the entire German command was moving their entire headquarters to the area. All the radio equipment, their political structure, their military structure. There was a rumor that Hitler was going to try to get there. So Eisenhower had secret intelligence that there was also a large explosion that had taken place in that area. A huge device. And the Kesselring had told Hitler that he wasn't going to use that weapon. So Eisenhower asked that we try to get there by the 1st. It was so important that they moved the 4th Armored Division in front of the Army with 2 infantry divisions on tanks and moved down to Orndorff. They didn't know it was a concentration camp. When they got there, they found the concentration camp. But they also found Nazi secrets. And from the information gained, they knew they continued to go south. And and go all the way to Czechoslovakia, that they would get most of the Nazi secrets. All of this was going to be the Russian zone. Eisenhower did not make the decisions, nor did Patton, what was going to be in their reports. Roosevelt, Truman, went to Churchill, and Stalin made those decisions. It was a political decision. It was not a military decision, and I could not. He gave him Berlin, but he couldn't change what was going to be changed. As a result, some of that stuff is still secret today. So then they found the concentration camps, and Patton asked Ike and Bradley to come to Orendorff, and for the first time they saw what it was like for people to be killed and murdered in mass scales. So Patton said, you know, they're probably going to cover this up and say it never happened, and Ike agreed. So I ordered the entire press corps of the European Theater, and any congressman and anybody else that could get down there to take pictures of all the concentration camps and all the death camps that we found, so that history would not cover it up. And he ordered the people in the surrounding areas of Germany to go there, the townspeople, and bury those people properly, and know that what had happened under the great Aryan nation of the Nazis happened right down the street from them, and he didn't want them to ever forget. So that was another part of the decision that is not normally put in the history books. So when it was all said and done, they found all these concentration camps, and they're just now figuring it all completely out of how much the Nazis worked to kill as many people as they could. And there's on the History Channel, there's Auschwitz, a series that lasts about 6 to 8 hours. You watch the whole thing. It tells you the whole history of it. And it's well worth watching. And I'm going to tell you something. The Nazis murdered, they decapitated, they burnt, they put people on the stake, they beheaded, they burned them alive under National Socialism, under taking everything and saying, we are the gods, we are the people, you'll worship the Nazi power. Does that sound familiar? The only difference today between ISIS and the Nazis is the Nazis knew they were wrong and they covered it up, and ISIS thinks it's okay. And I promise you, if we hadn't fought the Nazis to a standstill and completely eliminated Nazism, we wouldn't be here today. Now, we have some veterans here, do we not? We had some World War II veterans. Are you one of them?
I need Mr. Richard Bricky, step forward, please. I need you to raise your hand if you are a World War II veteran.
They have to raise your hand.
Raise your hand. All right?
2, 3.
3 people in this room, World War II veterans, are disappearing rapidly. In the next 10 to 15 years, there will be no World War II veterans. And Mr. Zubricki has something that we want to present to them. And I want you to hold applause until we present it, and then I want you to really applaud. Mr. Zubricki, I'll read the letter. What is a hero? A hero isn't the football player who catches the winning touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. A hero isn't the baseball player who hits a home run in the World Series. A hero isn't the basketball player who hits the bucket at the buzzer. No, a real hero is someone who helps secure the freedoms that Americans take for granted today. Because of you and others whose names we shall never know, the defeat of Nazi Germany, Fascist Italy, and Imperial Japan guaranteed that members of my generation would have a life of freedom. And they did this before we were even born. For this, my generation extends to you our heartfelt gratitude for the sacrifices you made. Whether you served on the front lines are in support of our troops at home. You never personally got rich like a sports star, but you enriched our lives beyond measure without any expectation of reward. And for that, we are eternally grateful. Thank you.
Yeah. You know, what do you say? We have real heroes of mine. Right? Go get him a hat.
I'm not using it.
Down to the last hat. We'll get you the handshake. We'll get you the hat.
We'll get you
Thank you so much.
We'll get their names.
Now, we're going to lighten up. Jeez. All right? So if you have any questions and fun stuff you want to know about Patton, dog, whatever, I'll answer it. What?
Maybe refresh your memory banks a little bit. I understand that you were involved with the construction with General Pershing after the First World War of our cemetery at 84 by St. Neil. And I was just kind of curious if there was any particular area that you stayed at, or if you were there on the grounds.
I can't even answer to that.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's not in the history. That's what it is. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
I had a question for General Bradley, if I could. In mid-morning on June 6th, how close were you to pulling our troops off?
Well, without the communication coming back from the beach, I sent my own aide to go in, smaller boat, to at least get a better look. Couldn't see very well from the encounter I was. And he came back and said it did not look good. So between 9 and 11, I was sweating. If I had not heard positive reports coming at 11 o'clock, I probably would have pulled them off.
When did the destroyers go in point blank? That it was around that it was between that 9 and 11 o'clock.
That was in that time frame. And without the Navy knocking out the bigger gun emplacements and machine gun bunkers, we wouldn't have gotten those positive reports. But yes, General Bradley or I would, without positive reports by 11 a.m., they would have come off and gone over to Utah.
All right. Any more questions? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What? Oh no, it's not controversial. It was an accident. And I'm serious. Earlier today I explained it in detail. So, to make it simple, he didn't know where he was going that day. They just kind of leisurely went pheasant hunting. Nobody knew but the people in the cars. Nobody could have planned to assassinate him. The truck driver, named Thompson, lived with it for years afterwards. He made several statements that ruined his life. He hated it tremendously. Horace Woodring had no idea he was driving past that day. When they got to where they were going, it was an accident, pure and simple. The MPs were almost there. They heard the crash. He ordered it not to be investigated. He said it was an accident. Patton did. He was the highest ranking officer in the theater at the time. The MPs stopped the ambulance right there on the spot. They took him to the 130th Hospital in Heidelberg. Heidelberg's General 7th Army was in charge of that, cordoned off the entire area. They brought an X-ray machine down because he knew he was paralyzed. He fell back on half gay, who was the chief of staff and his best friend since 1940, and he knew that it was an accident. He wrote several letters saying it was an accident. He was there. Horace Woodring wrote several letters saying it was an accident. There were recordings of Horace Woodring saying it was an accident. And then Beatrice came with Dr. Sperling. Dr. Sperling was the highest ranking surgeon, the most qualified surgeon, he was a colonel. And he x-rayed, he told Eisenhower, he told Roosevelt, the man's going to die. He told Truman, the man's going to die. Just a question of when. You can't sustain an accident like that and live. So Beatrice knew what the inevitable was. They would crush field devices on him because there wasn't a little tingling in his foot. They weren't real sure that it was completely severed, but it looked like that way on x-rays. And because it happened in the back of his neck. And so he was put, after the clutch field devices were put on, they stretched him out with their hooks. All right. Then they put him in plaster casts and they wanted to take him back to the States because they wanted him to die in the States. Beatrice was visiting him on the 21st of December and was reading to him, and he'd been coughing, he was in the cast, and he was tired, so she was going to go down and get a cup of coffee. She had taken about 5 steps down the hallway. The nurse had realized he stopped breathing. She came back, and Patton had passed away. At no time was he ever alone. The Russians didn't do it, and everybody who was there said it was an accident. Now there's a little bit more to the story. Frederick Ayer Jr., do you know who that is? That's his nephew. Do you know what his job was in World War II? He was counterintelligence. He was bureau chief, counterintelligence for the European theater, FBI, assigned to Shape. He loved his Uncle George. He wrote the book for the thing about his uncle, and he investigated the thing. Okay? Then 20 years afterwards, an OSS officer stood up and said that he had been paid $10,000 by General Donovan, that Eisenhower had asked General Donovan to kill Patton. Eisenhower was friends with Patton, didn't always agree with him, but friends. Donovan had been lifelong friends with Patton. Nobody paid $10,000 to kill anybody. But that spurred the movie, the brass target, where Kennedy played, and they shot the little rubber bullet through the glass. Well, Patton was a stickler for everything working right. If that window had not worked, it had been fixed. Nobody knew he saw it. So you have to believe that the guy knew where he was going, where he was going, when he was going to do it, but nobody else knew it. It didn't happen. Then 2 more books came out, and finally O'Reilly had now killed off Jesus, killed off Lincoln, and killed off Kennedy. You need to kill somebody else off. So by God, let's kill Patton off. Now he's killing Reagan.
But he made millions of dollars.
Yes. So if you need to make a lot of money, go find somebody that's not sure who got killed off and make a book about it. Go ahead.
First, I want to say this is fantastic. Question. I heard nothing about cavalry.
Cavalry?
During your speech, I heard nothing about the cavalry rate for American troops.
Well, it was lower in Patton's army than it was percentage-wise, except during the Battle of the Bulge. And that's a hard percentage to get through because you had a massive amount of troops against a massive amount of troops, and you had troops that were temporarily assigned to 3rd Army fighting it. But he had the lowest casualties than any of the other armies, although his casualties, because of the fighting, was high. But it was not, what happened, he was moving so fast that he would surround and go through things. The rest of the divisions were fixed fighting, and they were going back and forth with casualties. But casualties still were much higher than any of the wars that we fought since then. So when you look at the casualty figures today, they're huge. Now, he did give you casualty figures. He gave the reports. Yeah, so we know the casualty. But when you start getting into numbers like that, there was 30,000 killed and 15,000 wounded with a number of casualties. And so it gets people get it into their mind, this minutia. They can't keep up with all that. So that's why we don't go into it. It's just too detailed.
It's like the Battle of the Bulge. Estimated German killed, wounded, missing is over 100,000. We know that we lost approximately 28,000 during the Battle of the Bulge. World War II was the first conflict where battle deaths outnumbered non-battle deaths. We actually had less people die of disease in World War II than we had in any other conflict. And to show you how, and because speed and getting people into surgery quick saves lives. And back in World War II, they put you on an ambulance, a frontline ambulance, an FLA, and evacuated you back. They triaged you, and the most badly injured was sent back. But it took time. You fast forward to Vietnam. You were in Vietnam. I was in Vietnam. I'm a 24-year veteran. somebody got hit, you called for medevac. Medevac flew in irregardless of what was happening. Brave bastards. Got the guy out and got him back. Usually within 45 minutes, you were triaged in OR if you were going to be saved. Now, 10 minutes from the time you're hit in Afghanistan or Iraq, you're being triaged. I spoke to a young man who had been hit in Iraq, and the right front of his skull had been peeled completely off by a fragment. His buddy with him said he had seen flies lighting on his friend's brain. I met him when he was buying a gun in a gun shop, walking around. He said he had a little bit of short-term memory loss, and I told him, I said, even in the Vietnam War, you would have gone out when ammo resupply came in because you were dead. So this is what happens. And so as we get better technology, you know one of the finest things we've discovered as far as taking care of wounded in Afghanistan and Iraq? We discovered a new use for a tampon. Okay? You get hit in the chest, you're bleeding out. Sucking chest wound, you're going to bleed out. Lungs are going to fill with blood. A female soldier, not knowing what to do, one of her male cadres was hit in the chest. She grabbed a tampon and shoved it into the hole and pulled it. And he survived. Today, our medics carry 4 tampons in their aid pouch because it works. It works.
I heard a story about, I think it was Chozon Reservoir in Korea, that they dropped literally Tootsie Rolls. I think they were requesting ammunition, but they used the term Tootsie Rolls. Well, the request went literally, and they actually dropped Tootsie Rolls. But instead of making it a disaster, their weapons weren't working. They actually used them to fix some. Well, actually, I think there's a pipe run in order to patch the gaskets and that. So it's an amazing thing.
It's an amazing thing.
Yeah.
War drives technology, drives a lot of invention. Okay?
The other question is, I was just kind of wondering right off the top of my head is, okay, when we landed in Normandy there, with all of the intelligence, and my God, it's France, you know, the French underground, why were we so unprepared for the Bocage?
Because we failed to understand Bocage was 600 years old.
One period only.
And from the air, it did not appear to be untankable terrain.
That's what I mean with the underground.
No one thought about it. So we get on the beach, and we get into the Bocage, and our tanks are channeled into killing fields, and it takes 2 months to finally break through the Bocage. And why do we actually finally break through the Bocage? A guy comes up with an idea to build a plow on the front of the tanks that'll break through. Okay, that's technology being driven. Okay, and then of course Montgomery lures the German armor over towards his side through his unsuccessful attack in Operation Goodwood. 450 tanks destroyed in one afternoon. But on the plus side, the Germans have a finite number of tanks. Their armor pulls over to Caen, and there's very little armor facing the Americans. We go into carpet bombing, and we break out. And when we break through that thin, hard crust of German defense, there's nothing behind it. And then Hitler orders a counterattack at Mortain with his last available armor reserves in the West. And we slaughter them. And after that, it's who can get to Paris first. There's nothing beyond that. Plus, you have to remember, and I'm not trying to slight the American forces, I'm retired military. The divisions we encountered in the West were there to be trained and re-equipped after being bled white in the East.
And I was telling my
The SS divisions, the Army, France, after the French capitulation and the Russian-German war started,
France was the training area and the supply depot for the Wehrmacht and for the Waffen SS.
They had other nationalities, right?
Yeah, but so we run into these SS divisions, but these guys have already been bled white several times over fighting in the East, and they're back in France re-equipping and training. But for example, the 1st SS Panzer Division, they had not gotten above company level training. Patton in the nude.
That was good. I was going to say, if there's a way to drive us out, I think he came up with the best.
Who'd you serve with?
Original.
This is